You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I'm your host, Danielle Washington, and I have a bone to pick. I have a bone to pick with whoever came up with this idea of hustle hard mentality. Like, who came up with this? Let me just be on this hamster wheel of life and keep going, never rest, be burnt out to show that I am doing something, that I've got the American dream or I'm striving towards the American dream. There's 100% BS. This whole grind culture has us in a place of trying to be burnt out because we're showing that we can produce. It's showing, that to be able to produce shows us that we have value. And like my friend her name is Amber Wright, who will actually be an upcoming podcast guest on the show, said it best on Twitter. She was talking about how, you remember those early, like in elementary, I don't remember being in middle school, but in elementary, you can get an award for having a perfect attendance. She says those were deposits into this bad ideal of us never taking time off. I think that same mentality has got us in this grind culture, and it's time to detox. And that's why I brought on my guest today, Heather Archer of Thriving with Heather, who is a life coach. She's a hypnotherapy practitioner. She's a sound healer, and she's a Reiki healer as well. And she's been working for years on creating healing environments in schools and workplaces and about liberating us from this work-life mentality that we have to have it all, that there is a balance, and that, that we need to be doing this. My question I asked to her is, can we ever get out of this grind culture? Can we ever fully detox and be done with it? Find out the answer today. Hey, Heather, thanks for joining me on the Hell Well with Danielle podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a beautiful day outside. I got a hike in this morning, so I'm on the right track. How are you?
I'm doing good. I love that you hike. That's what I've been missing. I hike sometimes, but not as often as I'd like to. But I know getting out in nature really helps me kind of get myself grounded and just kind of that woosah feeling, especially in what we are talking about today. And we're talking about this whole grind culture. And I just want to start off. What in the world is the grind culture, and why should we be caring about it and focusing on getting out of it?
Okay. So grind culture is this belief that you're not valuable unless you're productive. And so what it does is, it's cool to be productive, there's a certain level of fire that you need to give to things in order to ensure that you are reaching your goals. But when you feel like if you're not producing, that something's wrong, or you feel guilty for resting, that kind of can take away a person's humanity. And so culturally, we're in this grind culture currently. And I feel like it's spiraled a bit since the pandemic, and, kind of leads to that whole great resignation that we're seeing of folks who are just like not willing to put up with the same working conditions anymore, So that's it. That's grind culture in a nutshell.
So it's interesting. Like, I get it, because I do feel like if I look at what the training I got from my father was, you have to produce to feel value. And so for him, like even now at 80 something, he feels like he has to continuously do to feel his value when it's depleting all of his energy. And that was the model that I had and the model I did at work for most of my years until I felt like my job was killing me. Like, where do you think this is rooted in?
It's definitely rooted in slavery. So American chattel slavery, even though it happened hundreds of years ago and emancipation happened hundreds of years ago. There's a really cool podcast. It's called 1619 and it's done by the New York Times. And there's a episode 2 is called The Economy That Slavery Built. And it really does a great job of breaking down kind of like when we think about our multinational corporations today and we think about reaching our quotas and what it takes to reach our quotas and those kinds of things, a lot of those practices stemmed from slavery. And really, when you think about what it takes to get enslaved people to do work, folks that were stolen from their country, they're not here because they want to be here. Like the kinds of tactics that you need to use in order to increase productivity are going to be really coercive, really violent, and those kinds of things. And not to say, not equating our current work system to being exactly like being enslaved. It's not that, but some of those same strategies that were used to get folks to produce at all costs are still being used today. And when we think about the way grind culture is so dehumanizing, it makes sense from that angle, because these tactics were used on folks that, weren't considered to be fully human, 3/5 of a human. And so that's kind of that's like a source. And I would also say, like, when we think about colonization and the European mindset that we've adopted as a culture, it's very linear. And there is this kind of like lack of value sometimes for communal, like community-based things or things that aren't related to productivity. And so that's a mindset. And I think that can kind of contribute to the overall like system of grind culture too. And that's why like I really get on folks who work in diversity, equity, and inclusion, like social justice folks, because I'm not really even trying to, there's some folks who are not going to understand this message and don't want to understand it. But like when I think about people who are equity minded and who are really trying to shift the trajectory, if we don't put grind culture in the conversation, what will happen is we'll perpetuate these same toxic systems because we didn't get to the root cause, which is like, how are we valuing our time? How are we valuing our freedom in relation to time, and also our bodies? Like, how are we valuing our own health and well-being when we're working?
And we're not taught the value. And I do think it goes back to slavery. Like there's this great quote that I saw on your page that was just like blown away. I think it was someone you met in Africa that said, slavery is over, but the spirit of slavery continues. And I definitely think it continues in so many different ways. I was talking to someone else the other day, and like, if you think about this, strong Black woman culture that we try to embody, a lot of that I feel is us trying to honor our ancestors because they were so strong and they were able to handle all these things. And so we're like, well, why can't we be able to produce as much as they were? But what we aren't taking into account is that they didn't have a choice. They didn't have a choice on what they were producing and how much they were doing and the grind that they were doing. They were forced into that grind. We are choosing to buy into this grind culture. And I don't know, like, how do we get out of it? Like, what fuels it more? Like, where do we go from here?
That's a great question. And, a lot of folks I talk to feel like they don't have a choice, that they need to grind because, and particularly when I speak with folks of color, sometimes I get the most like, hey, this don't make sense. What are you talking about? And it's because of like, well, there's this whole thing of like being that exceptional Black person, like you were speaking of, or like that superwoman complex. Particularly Black women, I find, are attracted to this concept of detoxing from grind culture, because even though we all are immersed in it, there's levels to it. And depending upon our positionality in this country and our identity, we're going to experience it in different ways. And so, but there are some people who really do think they're like, no, this is how I was taught. This is how you get ahead. I'm not going to be broke. I'm not going to be poor. And that's where I was too. I was like, look, I grew up in poverty. I know what that feels like. I'm not doing that. So I will work these long hours and I will do what I need to do, until I realized, similarly to you, like you were saying, like, oh, dang, this might kill me. If I keep up at this rate, this might kill me. And is it worth it? Like, is it really worth it when it comes down to it? Because no one's telling me to slow down. So, it's going to be up to me to kind of set those parameters. So yeah. But there's a mentality.
But how did you get yourself to even set those, like get to the mindset to even set those parameters? Like, how did you even what was the thought or the process or the trigger that got you to saying, I got to do this. I got to stop. That I do have a choice.
Yeah. So I just actually had a workshop last night and this came up too. And I shared my story around how I knew I was immersed in grind culture. So first and foremost, I learned about this concept or first heard about it from the NAP ministry, Trisha Hersey. And she'd have these quotes on not Facebook, Instagram. And I'd read them and kind of there was something in me that just sparked something. Like it was just like it activated me, even though I didn't fully understand what she was talking about when it related to grind culture. Mm-hmm. But I really do feel like an activation for me was when I became a mom and when I got pregnant, and I was just really used to just going hard. And I never really thought, I didn't fully understand the way that my relationship to work would shift as a mom. I had ideas around it, but as somebody who's been a recovering perfectionist, I can say that my perfectionism went into overdrive when I became a mom, because I was like, okay, I gotta show my job or my career that I'm still valuable, even though I'm taking care of this little one and breastfeeding, and I'm on maternity leave, and all these things, taking breaks because I have to take care of my body and my family. Like I'm still on it, y'all. So I had that in my head, and then there was also like bringing a new life into this world. And there's a lot of pressures put on like mothers, and, I can't mess up being a mom, so I'm like struggling with these two things. And it got to the point, my son was 6 months at the time. I was running an African Americans summer camp for youth. And it was all around healing and really cultural healing, introducing or reintroducing our youth to their African roots, and really kind of working on self-image and healing. But the way our staff was running, the way I was running myself, and the way staff were running, and like the way the structures that we were running in was completely toxic, in the sense that we weren't sleeping, going at it for 16 hours a day. And then it's like, just not like feeling guilty for taking a break. I got to the point, like I was on day 4 of the camp, and I had like been working about 16 hours straight, hadn't eaten, because that's my trauma response sometimes, is just, I'm not hungry, I'm too stressed out. And I'm looking up and I'm like, dang, I haven't eaten for like 16 hours and I'm breastfeeding too, And then I was just like, whoa, this is intense. Like that was that moment of like, if I don't stop myself, if I don't reclaim myself, nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to sit me down and say, hey, Heather, chill out, So that was a moment for me. And after that camp, I took my first vacation in quite some time, where I was like completely off the grid. Like, don't contact me. Don't send me no emails. Don't text me nothing. And that was a big thing for me to do that. And that was when I was like, I need to approach this work differently. And especially working in the field of healing, like sleep deprivation isn't healing, not eating isn't healing. Like those are some basics, And so it really helped me to reimagine how this work can look like. And so now, anytime I host an event, anytime I'm doing a really big project, I measure the success of that project based on how I feel at the end. So I know something was off if I'm like super stressed out and just like snapping off on people. Like structurally, there wasn't enough time for rest. There wasn't enough time for pause. And what's interesting is I feel like the quality of my work has improved, interestingly enough, having that intention as opposed to just go, grind it out. So
I think that's a great intention.
Yeah.
No, it did. Totally did. Like, I think that's such a great intention to like, it's not about, okay, how many people liked it? How many people signed it? How do I feel? Like, we don't like, oh my God, we can actually base it off of not how much money I made or how many shares, but how do I feel? Like, how am I internally taking this in? Like, that's a game changer. Yeah, I can see why that would definitely be a change in what you were doing in your business. But I also, one thing she pointed out was this ideal of perfectionism, which I do think is another part. I mean, I think slavery definitely has a root in all this, especially in people of color cultures. But I also think perfectionism is a huge part of this, because I think perfectionism and imposter syndrome, because I feel like we want to be perfect. We feel like we have, and especially people of color, I think we have to be perfect because we're that one person, we're that outlier. Like, and if we're not perfect, they're going to find someone else because, oh, Black person is, they're too angry, that they want too much, or they're lazy, like the stereotypes that we're being forced into. And it sucks because I get tired of trying to work so hard and to prove myself. And I don't know if it's just perfectionism or if it's, again, goes back to imposter syndrome. Like, well, who am I to be here?
All of that. Perfectionism is a losing game. That's not to say you don't aim for high quality, but like thinking about when you are the most productive, right? Is when you're your body's at ease, you're nourished, your mind is clear. And so that's one thing. It's just like understanding that I try to turn my perfectionism on me in a different way. I try to use it to my advantage. And I say, okay, if I really want to do this great job, there's some certain parameters I need to set for myself with how I'm caring for myself to produce the best product. And so flipping it around that way, it's like, okay, fine. I'll keep my perfectionism because that's a learned behavior. It's going to take a long time for me to fully step out of that. But at the same time, the way I'm approaching it is like not healthy for me. And then folks, as a leader or somebody who's like running in it, people can feel that, they can feel that. So it's definitely a losing game. I totally feel that imposter syndrome. There's that, who does she think she is to X, Y, and Z? And a lot of times we're saying that in our own heads. We're saying that about ourselves. And so that's why a big part of this work with detoxing from grind culture is retraining our brains, really looking at the values we have around work and productivity, and then like throwing out the ones that don't serve us, that we heard in childhood, that, we heard someone say and we internalized it, but it's not good. And then retraining our brains with new beliefs so that we do feel empowered to work in a different way, because it's hard. It means going against the grain. It means going against popular opinion. And that's not easy, especially when you're a Black woman, in corporate America or the workforce, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, what are other things that fuel, like, I know like capitalism, gender and, racial things, but what other things fuel this grind culture?
So that's a great question. There are, I actually just recently created a graphic to try to articulate grind culture in a more like visual way. But essentially, grind culture, I would say, is like the macro. But then you have all these other isms, whether that's, it could be white supremacy, ableism, capitalism, perfectionism, and gender oppression and internalized oppression. So those are like the 6, boogie people when it relates to like grind culture and how it fuels. And so I would say like aspects like perfectionism and internalized oppression, those are the things we do to ourselves, because that's the other thing, is the way we treat ourselves and the way we treat each other to kind of keep us in this system. The guilt we place on ourselves is like, oh, well, they're not trying, or, they're not going as hard as I am, or, well, I stayed until 10, to answer these emails. They got off right at 5, those ways that we kind of check ourselves and keep ourselves in this box. But then it's also the big stuff, like we live in a severely capitalistic society, free market economy, survival of the fittest. Let's go. And if you didn't work hard enough, that sucks for you. Ableism, like, are you physically able to grind like that? Like, nobody is. And like folks who are disabled, they are going to be impacted by grind culture way more because of ability, like having an illness that you have to show up with to work every day and manage and mask it is a thing. Because it's like you might be in a work environment where it doesn't feel good to call in sick, like you feel guilty, like even though you're sick. So yeah, gender oppression. When we think about this great resignation. And a lot of the folks who had to quit their jobs, me included, moms, like, or caretakers, people who are taking care of a household, and it's like too much. Like, you can't do both. You can't be at both places at once, in that sense. And so, yeah, those are the things though that fuel grind culture, but they work together. They do work together to keep this system going.
Yeah, and one of the things you brought up was, capitalism and survival of the fittest. And it kind of goes back to what I always talk about is, being in the survival mode. And I think, and that's part of why I wanted to create this podcast, is like, I feel like we're always we're just trying to get by. We're just trying to survive. And, it's not that we don't want better. We're just like, this is all we can do is just be in this mode. And when survival mode is grind culture and we're not really paying attention to get out of that and to get off that hamster wheel, we need to start looking and thinking and acting and showing up differently. And it just annoys me to some degree, because it annoys me not because of what other people are doing. It annoys me because I know this and I still stay on the hamster wheel at times. And it's learning how to give myself grace when I recognize it.
Yes. You really spoke to my heart when it's like, most people know, like, this ain't healthy, but like, how do I even begin to make the shift? And I think what you said, Danielle, is really key around awareness, right? Even just being able to be like, I'm going into it. And then you can engage in a practice to reclaim yourself, to remember who you are, to remember your sacredness. So that's a big thing. And also, that's why integrating healing into the conversation around grind culture to me is so critical. Like, we can't just have like an intellectual conversation around it. Like, there's a lot of history. You can go down and have a huge conversation around what created grind culture, but that's not going to help us to reclaim ourselves out of it. That's where the Cymatics comes in, like sound healing, going out in nature. Like, instead of being on the computer all day, are there ways that you can be working on your phone and be outside, and you're taking a walk and you're talking to somebody? Like, how can we get creative around caring for our needs? And sometimes folks are not able to take a break for whatever reason. Okay, you're not able to actually put down the work. Let's work around it. So, even I've done things like prescribe people to do a work bath. Like, okay, fine. You feel like you can't let it go. Run the bathtub. Just put some salt in the bath, some essential oils and all that. Put your phone in the bathtub. Get one of those trays or whatever, or tablet trays or something like that. And you can be restoring yourself, nourishing your body, doing something really holistic and restorative while you're working. And so it does mean flipping that narrative of like, I need to be suffering to be at work. I got to delay pleasure or gratification until after work. That goes back to slavery. That's an enslaved concept. So yeah, it's those things. And it's like, I know I'm not going to say never, that's strong, but I know that grind culture has a grip in my life because of the society I live in, because of the history that I've had. But what I do know is that having the awareness and being able to do checks on myself, like being able to know myself really well, to know when, I'm going off, I'm going on that other side of grind culture. Let me get up right now and take a walk, like right now. So that's what's been helping me a lot and helping me to stay balanced, particularly during this stressful time.
And I think that's going to help someone. I think we don't want to be all on the hamster wheel. I don't think anyone wakes up and like, yes, I want to grind till I have high blood pressure. I have diabetes. I have cholesterol issues. I'm stressed out. I'm obese. Everyone gets on my last nerves. Like, yes, honey. Yes, this is the life I want. No one says that. And if they do, I don't know you. At least I don't think I know you. And I think you need help. But I think having the conversations that you're saying and things that you're doing, the suggestions you made, gives people, oh, okay, I could work and take a bath. Girl, I didn't even think about that. I was like, ooh, mental note, will be on Amazon later on today, trying to get one of those cart things. Because I think I'm like, I never thought about that. But you also brought up something that I don't think everyone knows about is sound healing. I love sound healing, and you're an amazing sound healer. Can you tell people what sound healing is and kind of the benefits behind that?
Yes, yes. Oh, sound healing is great. So I am somebody who has dealt with high functioning anxiety for most of my adult life. And I can say, I've done talk therapy, but I would say that the sound healing has helped in ways that I can't even compare with talk therapy. And it's because, or like training my mind with meditation. And I would say that because they say that if meditation is like taking the stairs, then sound healing is taking the elevator when it comes to mindfulness.
Mm.
And I started actually going to sound baths regularly when I was pregnant. And it was just it was such a safe space. It was just such a safe space to rest. And I would just wake up refreshed. Sometimes you fall asleep during a sound healing. Sometimes you go into a deep meditative state. It's just where you're at. What it is though, there's different types of sound healing. I use the crystal singing bowls. Mm-hmm. And each singing bowl is tuned to a different vibration. Sound is super powerful for our planet, and our planet resonates actually at a certain vibration, 432 hertz. And so some of the singing bowls that I use are tuned to that. So it's just really getting us back to a sense of equilibrium with ourselves. And there's an emerging field. It's called Cymatics, and it's the study of sound. And there's some amazing research coming out. We don't even fully understand how powerful sound can be, but they're starting to use this research now for cancer, for anxiety, for depression, and they're seeing some really, really cool findings from it. So yeah, I always encourage folks, like if it's something that's intriguing, start by getting a small Tibetan singing bowl. That's how I started out, a small Tibetan singing bowl. And I actually used it as an instructor. And it was the thing that just worked every time like a charm to just get folks' attention, get them in the right state of mind. And then I started using it more for myself and then with others. And yeah, it's a tool if you're just go, it's really hard to be like that when you're listening to singing bowls. It's hard. You can't be grinding and listening to singing bowls. So it interrupts it. It just gets, you can play it. If you don't get the singing bowl, play them on YouTube. There's tons of sound healings on YouTube, binaural beats, and it's just going to put you in a different vibe, and to help you to see that another way is possible.
No, I love sound healing. That's why I wanted you to explain it. Like, I actually, not even low key, I hella want to learn how to do sound healing. Like, it's just something that I know intuitively I am meant to do because it's been such a huge part of my own healing. Through music, but through music initially and through, songs. I was that person who was like, if you heard my voicemail, it would play whatever song was my mood. But like even more so now, listening to binaural beats and sound healings and different, sound waves, whatever, I physically feel it in my body and feel the difference. And so I listen to sound baths every week, actually. I had to think about that. So every week, so I definitely know that it's helped. You talked about being in nature. You talked about, a couple other different things you can do. What are other ways that we can heal through or detox from this grind culture?
Okay. So we got the sound healing, yoga is cool. And I just want to say, I've been somebody who hated yoga. Like I've said that before in my life. Like, oh, it's I don't like how flexible I have to be. Yes. So I need to always preface that because I've been there. I've been that person of like, I want to do this. But it's one of those things where it's like, every time I do it, my body feels better. My body thanks me. They're like, even though it's like hard sometimes to be flexible and to stretch. So I started doing it more. And I would say for folks, yoga doesn't have to be a whole hour-long class. That's great if you're able to invest in that time and those resources to make that happen. But it's as simple as 10 minutes stretching out, It's just that idea.
I did it right before this podcast.
Yes. What kind of stretches are your go-tos, Danielle?
So for me, so I am a person who I go back and forth in yoga just because my body sometimes just can't handle it. But what got me into yoga, and I've talked about it on a previous podcast before, is I was in Bali and I was working with this Balinese healer. I call him Mr. Miyagi, and I didn't speak English. I'm like, little yoga, a lot of meditation. Well, he did a lot of yoga and a little meditation, but within that, I started mentally feeling better. I was like, okay, how did that work? And let's try it again. And so I got into Kundalini Yoga, which was amazing for me in terms of I was in Bali and I'm doing a head roll, and all of a sudden this wave of color rolls on me and this wave of motion. I'm just bawling and ugly cry bawling. But I'm not when I finally kind of come to, I'm like, oh wait, I'm not the only one crying. But okay, good. It wasn't just me. I found through yoga, I've been able to release a lot. So I do Kundalini Yoga. I really love Juvanuti Yoga because there's a spiritual aspect behind it, and there's mantras and other things like that. And then just for today, because I haven't done yoga in months, I was like, I'm just going to do a quick half-ass sun salutation. And that's what I did. I stretched, did some cat cows, and I did child pose. And I'm like, okay, this is what I felt called to do this morning. I was like, this is what we're going to do. And I feel great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it's really the simple things. I need to look up the other yoga you mentioned. What was that one? You said Kundalini, but then you said another one.
Juvanuti.
Okay, I'm gonna check that one.
I can't spell it for you in person, but I can look online and spell it because I always misspell it on a regular basis. But I love, love, love it.
Yes. So yoga and stretching is a really easy way to just kind of interrupt grinding. If you've been sitting a long time, or if you just need if you need a different perspective, I like to do the legs on the wall pose where it's just I'm getting blood rushing to my head, or any kind of inversion just helps you to see the world differently. And you're just getting oxygen to a different part of your brain during the process. So that's one way. Hypnotherapy has been really integral for me, both working with the hypnotherapist and then doing self-hypnosis. So retraining my subconscious mind around different beliefs I've had around productivity, self-worth, who am I when I'm not producing? That's been really helpful. So yeah, a lot of shadow work too. So just looking at
what shadow work.
So shadow work is when you deliberately take a look at the aspects of yourself that are the hardest to look at, that you tend to kind of just push to the side. It's really easy to deflect on other people, what's wrong with them and what they did wrong and how they need to kind of shape up and all that stuff. We know how to do that all day, but putting that mirror back on ourselves and healing our own shadows, we're not, it's hard. It's painful. It's hard. It's messy. Shadow work is a huge part, though, of grind culture and detoxing from it, because number one, we need to look at the shadow of the culture we've created that's created this constant go, this constant need to produce. How did it get there? So healing that shadow, but then also what are the things that we were taught when we were kids? What does our inner child say? And where did we adopt these beliefs? Sometimes it's not going to be super pleasant when we excavate that, but it's so necessary. So that's been a big thing. What's the other thing? Oh, nature. We talked about nature. So I'm notorious for, does it have to be an on-camera Zoom? Can we have a conversation on the phone sometimes, and a lot of times people are grateful for that. It's sometimes people are just waiting for one person to not want to be on camera. And then it's okay, well, I don't want to be on camera either. It's okay, so that's been big for me.
Would you say boundaries also play a big role in that?
Yes. Boundaries are huge. Communicating boundaries. Where's that? I had a book. I don't see it off top, but I can send it. Oh, actually, no, it's right here. It's called, I love this book. I recommend it to everyone. Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself. Her name is Netra Glover Tawwab. Yeah, she's great. And she just breaks it down. these are boundaries. These are how you set them. Here's some examples how you can set them at work, how you can set them with your family, your friends. And it's very difficult though, because you very well might communicate a boundary to somebody who you love and care about, who will not understand your boundary, or you'll have to keep communicating with them. And then you might have to shift the way in which you engage with them, you know? So it's painful, but it's been so empowering to be able to be coached around the language of how to renegotiate boundaries, you know? Yeah. And so yeah, boundaries is a big part of it too.
And the one of the things I love that you talk about, and I don't think we think about it, we think about, and we always talk about work-life balance, but instead of talking about work-life balance, you talk about work-life liberation. What does that look like?
Yes. Work-life liberation is a concept where, what does it look like? It's like the alternative outside of grind culture, or I would say it's a possibility outside of grind culture. So it would look like having a work life where you are able to clearly state boundaries, or it's safe to state, you know, to have healthy boundaries, like creating a safe container within your workspace for that. It would look like having sovereignty around your time. So, you know, if you are producing something, like what it might sometimes make sense to produce it when you're the most present and optimal to get that work done. So it does mean changing our relationship with time in the workplace, especially when folks have family commitments or personal commitments. So creating more spaciousness for that. It does look like having work be a safe space where we can engage in somatic healing. You know, we can take a quick yoga break. You know, I'm going to take a 10-minute yoga break between meetings to just kind of, you know, or I'm going to take a walk around the block and come back, or that kind of thing. So it is that idea though of like, what might it look like to be productive, but to do it from a place of joy and empowerment? Like, do we need to choose? Do we need to either be empowered and joyful, and then we're not getting anything done? Because that's the big thing, is that people kind of say is like, well, you can't have fun all day. You know, you got to get your work done. You know, yeah, you do got to get your work done, but how? It's the how. So that's a little bit around work-life liberation, and yeah, because the work-life balance is. I don't know of anybody who really has that per se.
I agree with you.
That's working. You know, so it's even like maybe balance isn't the way. Maybe we need to take it a bit further.
And so, like, I do think that there is no work-life balance. I mean, there's no set 50-50 work-life balance. I don't think there's a 50-50 balance of anything in your life in that aspect. But I do know that when you are in a community where you're working with people and you're having these conversations, there's more of ability for you to grow. Like, I know that you have something coming up that you're working on that's kind of helping people. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. So right now I've launched a workplace wellness subscription program with a company called Subkit. And basically, it's an alternative. So I'm a life coach, and I particularly support folks when it comes to workplace wellness and interrupting grind culture and perfectionism. That's my sweet spot. And at the same time, understanding that like we gotta create systems or get really innovative to make sure that coaching is accessible for, you know, everyone, not just if you're able to, you know, have book a whole like one-on-one life coach, you know, over a period of 3 months. So anyways, this is like kind of a way to support folks who want to have these conversations and they need a steward to support. And so it's a group coaching. So it's we do bi-weekly support sessions. And then in between the times we meet, there are some care assignments that we're working on. And, you know, we're able to also dive into some healing modalities in the sessions like sound healing or hypnotherapy or Reiki. And also build with each other. Because the fun thing about detoxing from grind culture is there are all different kinds of ways to do it. No one person's journey is going to look the same because, we're different people. We're in different work environments. And so our grind culture detox, like mine and yours, is going to look real different. And so what I love about hosting these spaces is also learning from others, like what are they doing to kind of support their own grind culture detox journey. So that's always fun. But so that right now there's a wait list for it. And it is going to be launching at the beginning of January. So right now I'm just kind of getting people on the wait list. And yeah, I'm super excited about it.
I think that's great that you're doing that because we need that. And when we try to grow and heal alone, I mean, we can do it, but collectively, when you know that you're not, there's this me too, like, oh, wait, there's someone else going through this, or you're hearing someone else's story, and like, oh, I can try to add that. I think it just helps us grow at a faster pace and heal at a faster pace and know that we're not alone. And I think we need that in our healing process to know that we're not alone. I forgot that you were a Reiki practitioner. I wanted to ask you, like, how did you get into Reiki and like, how has Reiki shaped your life, like, and affected your life at all?
So Reiki is something I've always kind of been around. So my mom was a nutritionist and was very much kind of had me in the sector around like alternative medicine. And so I've gotten Reiki healings. I never saw myself as like pursuing it, but I actually started utilizing Reiki and going to a Reiki practitioner a couple of years back, and just saw the amazing progress it supported, how it supported me, and just got curious because that's the thing about Reiki. Anybody can do it. Like we're all energy workers. Energy's all around us, and so it is just really the practice of directing energy in a mindful, intentional way. We're already doing it, but it's just now doing it in a more mindful way. And so, what I love about Reiki is it goes quite nicely with the other healing modalities that I'm interested in. The way I've been using it mostly has been to support with chakra aligning. So doing that on a regular basis where I'm just kind of doing a body scan and and that's something I really do like to share with folks around how to do is like, how do you check in with your own energy centers? Like my hope is that the folks that I work with, like I want to work with them and help them, but ideally I want them to feel empowered to continue the work on their own. Like I think we're going into a new age where we need to have these tools accessible, like on deck with us. Like we can't be waiting to book an appointment and then, getting the money together to do it. So having that in my toolkit has been helpful. I've noticed, I don't know, they've done studies around it. I don't know if it's proven, but I do know that when I'm doing Reiki, like consistently, my skin looks better. Like that's one thing I notice. Also, I just feel I just feel a little bit more calm, like I just feel a little bit more balanced. And then it's fun to try Reiki, like infusing Reiki in my water, right? So like doing a Reiki energy healing in my water. It's just like in my home when I do space clearings, it helps me to go about the world in a more mindful way.
No, I love it. I mean, it's changed my life, and I couldn't imagine my life without it now because I use it for everything from manifesting. I Reiki my food. I clear my space. I do Reiki on other people, and I do Reiki on myself in the morning on a regular basis. Kind of as that's part of my morning routine to kind of get myself grounded and in a good space. I love it. So, one last question I want to ask you: so, how can people find you? How can people connect with you? How can people work with you? Where are you on the social media streets?
Where am I not on these social media streets? I'm just like, there's a lot going on in social media these days. But yeah, I would say mainly, definitely Instagram. And so you can find me at thriving_with_Heather on Instagram. YouTube is something I'm getting way more into, and I'm going to be putting a lot more content and in-depth like lectures and talks on YouTube as a resource for folks who want to go deeper into these concepts. And so, yeah, YouTube, follow me on YouTube. It's the same, thriving_with_Heather. I'm a newbie on there. I'm trying to build my community on YouTube. And I would say those are the two main ones. And then there's my website, thrivingwithheather.com. And you can always subscribe on my email list to kind of stay up to date with, just different events that I have going on. I have in-person events in the Bay Area, and then I also have online events quite regularly.
Awesome. So I ask my guests at the end of every episode quick fire questions, nothing major. So we'll just start it off. So the first question I always love to ask people is, what does living hella well mean to you?
Living hella well means time sovereignty, having sovereignty over my time. So that means like if I wake up, even though I planned to, I'm going to knock out all this different work, but if I wake up and I'm just not feeling it, it's the feeling of not having to push through to be like, actually, I can adjust. And so that's something that, that living hella well means. Definitely getting out in nature. So I have a challenge for myself during these cold months to like go take a walk outside every day. And I'm somebody, if it's cold, I don't want to be outside. I just want to be in the house all day. And I'm really challenging myself to like, no, I know that this is medicine my body and spirit needs. I'm going to get out there, even if it's a short walk, I'm doing it. So that's living hella well. Taking my vitamins every day, just really especially during these times with, as the months get colder, that's real important. And then also just like having fun, like having free time, having time where like there's nothing calendared. I'm existing, that's becoming more important to me.
Aisle or window?
Aisle or window? It depends on if I'm traveling by myself or with my little one. If I'm traveling with my little one, aisle, so we can get to the bathroom. Window, if I'm traveling by myself, and that way I can just kind of go in the corner, take my little nap, look outside the window, that kind of thing.
Love it. What's always in your travel bag?
What's always in my travel bag? Okay, so outside of the basics like your phone, laptop, that kind of thing, I would say, what is always in my travel bag? I like to smell good. I like, my essential oils, my little oil roll-on. So I'll go through lengths to make sure I'm traveling with those, even though sometimes like with the regulations, like it's harder to go in and out. But I do notice I try to do that anyway. So I would say that's a definite. And a book, like I love reading physical books when I'm traveling. It just feels good to like hold something and read it.
What's one thing that brings you joy?
Hanging out with my son and just like the free play, like the times when we're doing free play or we're doing like we're reading books and stuff, and just kind of like just having those moments, those unscripted, impromptu moments of quality time, that brings me a lot of joy.
And my last question is, what advice would you give to your future self to continue to thrive and not be in the survival mode or grind culture?
These are some good rapid fire questions. Future self. Future self. I would tell them that you might be in a situation, like even if, actually, I'm come to find out, this sounds really weird, but the more unpopular an idea is, sometimes the more you need to kind of like hold out for it, just because other people don't see the vision. That doesn't mean that your vision is not valid. And so that's something I've been learning time and time again. Some of the hardest decisions I've made have also been unpopular. And then, in retrospect, like, oh, thank God I did that. Thank God I didn't listen to what other people were saying. So I would say, being unpopular sometimes, that's okay. You don't always got to be liked, or people don't always have to fully understand you for your work or your ideas to be valid.
Oh, that was a powerful one. That was a powerful way to end. Thank you so much for being on this podcast episode. Thank you for being on the Hello Well show. And thank you all for listening to us. Make sure you follow Heather. Get on that wait list, because I can tell you right now, that list's going to be long. So you might want to get on it now so you get on the higher part of it. Thank you guys. And I will see you guys next week on another episode of the Hello Well with Danielle podcast. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.